I'm Ashley Dvorkin for Fox 411, joined by Matt Atchity of RottenTomatoes.com. Sad news out of Hollywood as Star Trek actor Leonard Nimoy has died at age 83. Today we reflect on his great career. Matt, of course, many fans know him best as Spock. Tell us a bit about his time on the show and how he really made that such a memorable role.
Yeah, Leonard Nimoy really is probably considered the heart and soul of Star Trek. Yes, we've lost some of the other cast members, James Doohan and DeForest Kelley, but this is really a huge blow to that cast. They were all very tight-knit, as much as you sometimes hear about Shatner being a little on the outs with them, but he was very influential in that show. Some of the most iconic elements of Star Trek are things that Leonard Nimoy came up with. The hand gesture when he would say "live long and prosper," that's based on his experience seeing Jewish clergy doing that during a particular blessing. The idea of the Vulcan nerve pinch, he came up with that for that character. So his interest in that character, I think, really helped propel the success of the show. And really, as the years went on, he wrestled with whether or not he wanted to embrace his legacy. For a time in the 70s, he wrote a book, for instance, called I Am Not Spock, that he kind of tried to distance himself a little bit from that. But then he came around 20 years later, wrote another autobiography called I Am Spock, and really embraced that. And it's a legacy that he took very seriously.
Yes, well, his longtime co-star, as you mentioned, William Shatner, actually had this to say to Fox 411. I loved him like a brother. We will all miss his humor, his talent, and his capacity to love. So, of course, he meant so much to that show, so much to the fans of that show. He also went behind the camera. Talk about some of his work as a director.
Yeah, he directed the third Star Trek movie, The Search for Spock. He was approached by the producers after the second film where Spock had been killed, and he was a little concerned, but he embraced that, then went on the next year, 1988, to direct Three Men and a Baby, which was the highest grossing film of that year. After that, he did a little bit of directing some TV episodes, but he pretty much hung it up, as if to say, well, I've made a successful film. I know that I can do it. I don't need to keep beating my head against the wall trying to replicate that. He directed some TV. He produced some TV specials. We had seen him in other television shows. After Star Trek, we saw him do a stint on Mission Impossible. He had the iconic show In Search Of, where he was the narrator, which was kind of an early version of reality television. So he had a very long career. His hobby was photography. He would have shows in Los Angeles from time to time, doing black and white photography of the human form. Very, very talented man. Spent some time as a writer. Really kind of an artistic renaissance man.
Sure, and talk about when he revisited his role as Spock in the movies and sort of the reaction to that, obviously, the fans seeing him again in that role.
Yeah, that was one of the things that you had to see. The original first Star Trek movie, there was a point at which you thought maybe we're not going to see Spock. Then he comes back. He doesn't make it past the second movie, but then he is such an icon, you can't move away from him. And when the Star Trek films get rebooted with a new cast, the one person that they make sure to have included is Leonard Nimoy as Spock. His legacy as that character really is key to that enjoyment of Star Trek. The way that Spock was used as a device for the writers to examine humanity and examine what it meant to be human, that's really what Star Trek was all about. And I think in finding Leonard Nimoy, they found the perfect person to portray that. And I think if you look at his artistic legacy outside of Star Trek, he's still examining those same things. And it's hard to imagine anyone else being able to successfully pull that character off and have that level of longevity doing it.
Of course. And now, talk about some of the TV work. You spoke about TV work after Star Trek. Later on, maybe projects and appearances that really stood out.
Yeah, he was a cast member on Mission Impossible for a while. He did the voiceover work for In Search Of. We saw him direct some TV episodes. He teamed back up with William Shatner, directed a couple of episodes of T.J. Hooker. He had produced some TV specials. So he definitely kept his hand in TV. And although his legacy isn't as big outside of Star Trek, he definitely had a bit of an influence there. I want to point out that it is interesting that you see one of the cast members in Mission Impossible is almost Martin Landau almost ended up with the role of Spock, that is. But then we later saw him on Fringe, a recent sci-fi TV show. Clearly, Leonard Nimoy loved doing science fiction. Fans loved to watch him do it. We saw him do voiceover work for both animated shows and video games. He was a real icon. Loved the fans, loved to interact with the fans, and it's going to be a legacy that I think is hard to repeat.
Absolutely. Matt, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. And in honor of the man himself, I'm going to leave you with that iconic greeting and an iconic goodbye. Live long and prosper.
That's right. In the great words of Leonard Nimoy, thank you. Live long and prosper. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
For more on the life and career of Leonard Nimoy, see fox411.com. I'm Ashley Dvorkin.